Hey guys, it's me Seren, back with another video. So this is going to be a review video of the movie It, which I did see. I'm actually going to have quite a few review videos coming up soon because I've seen a couple of movies and I'm reading some stuff that I'm going to review for you guys. So just be on the lookout for that. This is going to be a review of the movie It, which you guys knew I was going to see because you guys know I love killer clowns. I love killer clowns. I like clowns. I like the Joker. What can I say? I had to go see it. I thought it was good. I really, really, really liked it a lot. I'm going to do this review in the good, the bad, and the ugly format. So we're going to start off with the good, what I did like. Number one, I thought this film was beautifully, 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 beautifully shot. This type of nostalgia project, which it definitely is, the original book, It, which was written by Stephen King, is set in the 1950s, and it also deals a lot with Jim Crow era racism. They reframed it, rebooted it so that this movie is set in the 1980s. So obviously they're going for that 80s King vibe that blew the fuck up last year with this like Stranger Things shit, you know, like the E.T. and the Goonies, which I love those 80s movies. If you've seen my Stranger Things review video, I did not like Stranger Things because I didn't really think that they did that time period justice. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more in this video as well. But you know what? I'm sorry. I know It. I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I feel like everybody should know this story, but for anyone that is not familiar with the story of It, it's a novel about a demonic entity that takes the form of a clown and kills children in this town, a fictional town called Derry, Maine. Stephen King lives in Maine. He has this whole like Maine thing, this like Maine obsession. Like the majority of his books are set in Maine. Some of them are set in real towns in Maine. Some of them are set in fictional towns in Maine. It is set in a place called Derry, and Derry is kind of like the Hellmouth, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's just like a place where like mad weird shit happens, and this like demonic entity who manifests as this clown called Pennywise the Clown has this like hold over the town, and these kids are trying to figure out like what the fuck is going on and like what is this thing and like why is it like eating kids. And it doesn't just eat them, it like terrorizes the shit out of them. It like makes them see things. It just like really fucks with them. So that's like the plot of the movie and the plot of the book. I'm gonna try. There are gonna be spoilers. Matter of fact, let me just spoilers, spoiler alert, 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 spoiler alert. So if you have not read this book, watch the original miniseries or seen this movie. I'm gonna try not to go too in depth, but I can't really discuss this without getting into some spoilers. So there you guys go, spoiler alert. So getting back to this review. It was very, very beautiful. Since I grew up reading Stephen King and like loving Stephen King so much, I went through this like whole Maine phase where I was just like, I've never been to Maine. I've still never been to Maine, but I have been to Vermont, which was beautiful. And I was just like, I have to get to Maine and I want to live in Maine and Maine. There's really too many white people there. Like, and even like Stephen King, like even in this book, It, like Stephen King addresses like the racism of a lot of these like small like white towns and communities and the way they deal with like black people especially. But it was like beautiful. Like it was very beautifully shot. It was not cheesy. I was saying that like these types of nostalgia projects so often can get into like the cheese fest, like the cheesy cheese territory. But they kept it very grounded in reality. The sun is like going in and out, so my light is probably like getting lighter and darker and lighter and darker. Sorry about that, guys. I didn't turn my lights on because it's the middle of the day. I wanted to film in natural light. But they kept it very grounded in reality. It had great, beautiful cinematography. You guys know I'm a sucker for good cinematography. Just like, you know, great staging of the scenes, just very well staged, like well framed, clean lines, good lighting, great color. It just all really worked from a visual perspective. And I love watching a pretty movie. Like, I love watching a movie that is not hurting my eyes while I'm looking at it. And like I said, Stephen King has this whole thing for like, you know, Maine and this Americana that everybody loves so much. And even though Derry is a fictional town, they really played up the beauty of like what a small town in Maine could look like, especially at this time period. Like there's woods and there's quarries and cliffs and sweeping views and all this water, and we see the kids like jump off the cliff into the water and go swimming, and they're splashing around, and they really evoke this sense of this small town life again, this like fucking Americana, apple pie shit that everybody loves. But it's very pretty, and even the terrifying scenes with the clowns and all the other like demonic ass fucking shit that he makes manifest are just like shot in a very clean way that I enjoyed watching. Like there's a scene where there's like footprints. There's like footprints, these like wet footprints on the ground, and you can like clearly see like every footprint. You can see it. You can they're really using the visuals to just like play up the tension and even in the non-tense scenes, again, like the scene where the kids jump off the cliff and they're splashing around and stuff, they're really using the visuals to like evoke certain senses within you as the viewer. And I love that. That's part of the reasons why I like going to the movies, part of the reasons why I love film, why I love cinema. And along those same lines, the opening scene, which is very famous, the opening scene of the book, and now in the miniseries and now this film adaptation, is very, very famous. And it's probably, that opening scene was probably one of the best opening scenes I've seen in a movie all year. They really did justice to the book. Even if you haven't read it, I'm sure you've seen in passing in some type of interactions with pop culture this like scene or this idea of like a sewer, of like a clown in a sewer, like in a grate, like talking to this little kid, and you're like, what the fuck is going, like, why is the clown in the fucking sewer talking to the kid? Like, what the hell is this? And they really, it just gripped you right from the jump. Like, they didn't worry about no pretenses, no introduction, like, they just like put you right there as soon as the movie starts, and you're like, oh my god, there he is, there's Pennywise, and sucked you into the film. Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise the Clown was amazing. He was fucking incredible. Perfect casting. They had originally cast one of the kids from The Maze Runner, which I don't think would have worked at all. And that kid had to like drop out for something else. And that was like some divine intervention because Bill Skarsgård was so good. The makeup was everything, his mannerisms, and the way he's talking and like he's like moving around. Like I loved it. And he's like, Georgie, don't you want to get your balloon? I'm like, oh my god, this is like reminding me of my mom, because me and my mom are like big Stephen King fans, and my mom used to like put the voice on and like, I was like, oh my god, I feel like a child. I feel like I'm reverting back to childhood right now, like watching this shit. And I love a killer clown. And my mom used to collect. We like clowns. My mom also likes clowns. She used to collect those like porcelain like clown figurines, like ceramic, and they'd be like all over the house. You guys probably wouldn't want to come to my house when I was a child, but I like clowns. So even though I'm afraid of like dolls and Barbie doll, like I don't like Barbie dolls and like action figures and stuff, I like clowns. So I like the ceramic clowns that you have them like sitting up, and so it was like seeing my childhood like up on the screen. Just again, like his mannerisms and the way that he was talking, and I loved it. And it was scary, but not overly scary for me, again, because I'm not afraid of clowns. Pennywise can like manifest as other things, and other things that you're afraid of, which is like part of like the overarching theme of the story is like fear and like things that you're afraid of and like feeding off your fear and stuff like that. So for me personally, other things that he would appear as were more scary than the clown. But for those of you that don't like clowns, this movie is going to scare the shit out of you. Like, let me let you know, this shit's going to scare the shit out of you because Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, the motherfucking demonic clown, is scary as fuck. He I mean, again, like, I like clowns, but if you don't like clowns, this shit's going to fuck with you. You might have nightmares. Like, I'm going to just put it out there from jump. And it's not too many, like, there are a lot of, like, jump scares, but not, like, cheap. Not a lot of cheap scares. Not a lot of cheap scares. The things that he appears as, the things that he does you understand why he's doing it and why it's scary. It's not just like a cheap boo just for the sake of boo. You know what I'm saying? And just Bill Skarsgård was so good. His acting was so good. It was amazing. And the acting overall was extremely good. I really like most of the child actors. So there's 7 of them. I'm not looking up all the names of these kids like in real life or anything like that. It's 6 little white kids and 1 black kid, and one of the little white kids is a girl, which is true to the book. It's like a couple of Jewish kids, like a fat kid, a kid with a stutter, a hypochondriac, a black kid, and a little girl is a redhead. So it's like misfits, you know, and this idea of like misfits sticking together, and they call themselves the losers, like the Losers Club. And all that is true to the book. They did not change any of that from the book. And all these kids, with the exception of one, which I'm going to get to, that fucking little kid, they're all relative unknowns. Maybe you guys know better than me who these kids are, but none of these kids, again, with the exception of one, were familiar to me. And they all did a really great job. Like, the acting overall in the movie was really, really, really good. It was extremely good. I did enjoy the child actors. The little girl was very good. I feel like these little girls in these projects, same thing in Stranger Things. A lot of the times these little girls are like the standouts in these groups that are like, oh, it's like 6 fucking male kids and like 1 little girl, and like the little girl is like the standout of the group, you know. But really, like, my fave was like Eddie the hypochondriac. This fucking little hypochondriac kid, he has his little fanny pack with his little fucking pills in there and his little asthma, and he's like, guys, this is a bad fucking idea. Like, we shouldn't be here. I was like, yo, that kid would be me, like rattling off stats about how this shit is a bad idea, like the shit that these kids want to fucking do. So I really enjoyed that. And I think that the use of like these relatively unknown kids was also a solid choice, again, in lending to the grounded nature of the film, the realistic tone of the film, keeping it from getting too cheesy, too far into like a Hollywood, you know, type of feel or tone. And they just all did a great job. The one kid that I didn't like was the fucking kid from Stranger Things. Y'all know I hated that little kid in Stranger Things. The main kid, what was his name in Stranger Things? Mike? Was that his name? All these kids named Mike, because there's a kid named Mike in It, who's black, in It, like I think his name was Mike. The main kid, the one that like falls in love with Eleven with the brown hair. In this movie, they put some glasses on him, like as if that's going to disguise the fact that he's the fucking annoying-ass kid from Stranger Things. And so now I'm going to get into the bad. So that was the good. So now I'm going to get into the bad. I hate this kid. I really hate this kid. I kind of want to punch this kid in the face, but, you know, you can't punch children. But he's horrible and abrasive, and he has now been horrible and abrasive in everything that I've seen him in. So apparently that's going to be his little shtick, like, I'm an asshole. I'm awful and irritating, and these white people love that shit. All the white people in the audience are just, ah, ha, 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 ha. And he's like, oh, did your mom suck my dick? Why are you talking like that? Why are you, you're 12 years old. You deserve to get smacked in the mouth. And we never see his I don't think we ever even see his parents, his mom or dad, like, which I'm also going to get into that a little bit as well, like the backstories of some of the kids. But it's just like, God, you're so horrible. You're so horrible, and I don't think it's funny. And again, it's like that Deadpool. You guys know I hated Deadpool. That Deadpool frat bro, white bro. I'm just gonna be as abrasive as is humanly possible, and it's just gonna be so funny, you know. And they just eat it up. And I also think that like this is really their idea, which I touched on in Stranger Things as well, of how these like little white boys especially are. They're just entitled little shits, and they just think it's so cute and precocious, and it's not. And they keep also trying to like latch on to, because like the old 80s movies, like the Goonies, for example, had like the kids were like little fucks also, like Mouth, who was like one of the Coreys. I think Corey Feldman played Mouth, and fucking and Mikey, because in every single one of these shits is a kid named Mike. Mikey was played by Samwise from Lord of the Rings, and it's just like Mouth was a little shit also, but Mouth wasn't just a little shit. Mouth wasn't, and they called him Mouth because he was just always running that shit, always talking, never shutting the fuck up. But Mouth wasn't just only a little shit. Like, we saw him be afraid, we saw him be brave, we saw him be excited. You know, these adaptations of these like 80s projects, these nostalgia projects, they want to like, they're like leaving out the innocence and the wonder, I think, of children in a lot of ways. They just want to like give you these laughs of like the abrasive nature of like how kids can be little assholes, but like not showing like so many of the things that are amazing about kids. And I love kids, like kids are dope. And it's just like they're leaving out a lot of that shit. Like they pick one of the kids that's going to be an asshole and like asshole, 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 asshole. They don't allow these children, especially these boy children, especially these white boy children, to have a full range of emotion, to run the whole gamut of emotions. They're sticking with these, you know, they're sticking these white boys on like fuckface asshole mode, and they're just like leaving them there in these adaptations. And I just don't like this kid. Like, I don't like that he has to be in all the 80s shit. I don't like that he's so annoying. Just like get him the fuck out of my face. Like, just get him the fuck out of my face. And I also want to say that, like what I was saying about the backstory, it's 7 kids. It's like 7 original characters that are in the book, and they retain all 7 of the original characters, but they don't really give them all enough to do, and they don't really flesh out enough of the backstories of the kids. Like, several of the kids, we don't know anything about them. We never see their parents. We just don't know, which again was an issue that I had with Stranger Things. You have these ensemble casts, but then you have several scenes where some of your main characters literally don't speak or do anything. They're just present in the scene, you know, as a main character. We don't get a backstory on them. The black kid in particular, which I'm going to get into later, you know, like, they clearly want us to focus on, like, you know, Bill, who's like the one with the stutter, that his little brother, Georgie, is the one that, like, gets fucked up in the opening scene. They clearly want us to focus on the little girl. They clearly want us to focus on the fat kid. The fat kid, the redhead little girl, and Bill, the stutterer, end up in a love triangle, which I'm going to get to. Y'all know I hate that shit. And then they also clearly want us to focus on Stranger Things kid, just because he's Stranger Things kid, like, he's the recognizable face. But even, like, Stranger Things kid doesn't really get any type of a backstory. And it's just like, you have 3 other characters, my nigga. Like, give them something to do or cut them out, you know? Or, you know, just, like, do more work with the other kids, especially moving forward, considering that another gripe of mine was that this film was overly long. It is 135 minutes, which is, like, 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is long as fuck, okay? Like, that's longer than Dunkirk, okay? Like, when you're outpacing Chris Nolan movies out here, you need to, like, reassess, you know? The film was overly long. It had pacing issues, a lot of shit that could have been cut out. There was also not a strong enough central narrative, like a strong cinematic thread, like holding a lot of the scenes together. Like, a film should have a central narrative, whatever the central narrative is. You know, like, a film should be like a tree, right? So you have, like, your tree, like your trunk, and then you have, like, your branches. So, like, your branches are, like, your little scenes, your individual scenes. But your trunk is your central narrative. Like, that is your common cinematic thread. I saw the movie with a friend that was like, you know, too many things just happened. You know, like, there weren't a lot of transitions moving you from one scene to the next. There were a lot of cuts. There was just a lot of, like if you just have a bunch of branches on the ground, like, you know, just, like, random shit going on, but it's not really being directly linked back to, like, whatever that central narrative is. You know, there was, like, a whole hour, the whole first hour of the movie was, like, weird things are happening, but, like, the kids are not talking to each other about the weird shit they're seeing. They're not talking to their parents about the weird shit that they're seeing. And even, like, the scenes themselves are kind of arranged funny. There's, like, a whole backstory with this movie, though, which my friend actually told me about because I wasn't even aware of how they, like, switched out directors. And it was originally going to be, like, a 3-hour-long, like, magnum opus, and then they realized they couldn't do that. And so now they had to do all this cutting, and you can tell that it was, like, heavily edited, because there will be, like, a scene of some weird shit, and then, like, a scene of the kids swimming, splashing around, joking around, having fun. Like, wait, I just saw a kid getting terrorized, like, and then, like, a scene of, like, Bill, stuttering Bill at home with his, like, grief-stricken parents because, like, his little brother disappeared, and then, like, a scene of them at school, and then a scene of some more weird shit, and then a scene of them all riding their bikes, cracking jokes, listening to rap music. Like, what am I watching? Like, what am I watching? Definitely heavily edited, which made the central narrative choppy. Like, if the central narrative is supposed to be, you know, it is supposed to be the monster, and figuring out how and why he's there and why he's terrorizing them in this town and this hold that he has over the town, it took too long to get to the point. And that, again, was, like, also affected the pacing. So, the good, the bad, the ugly. They cut out the whole black kid's backstory, Mike. So this is going to be very spoilery. In the book, he's originally the historian of the group. He's looking and researching into the history of this fictional town of Derry, Maine, and trying to figure out, you know, like, why so many kids disappear in this town. Why are there so many, like, gruesome child murders in this town? So many, like, weird occurrences and just, like, weird shit going on. In the book, he's the one that, like, looks into it. In this film, that's switched to one of the white kids, the fucking fat kid, for, like, literally no reason at all. Like, it's, like, switched for no reason. So one of his, like, main core purposes in the group as the historian is just completely removed. And they also completely, like, flatten out and remove his backstory. Because in the book, he has a fear of fire. Because his family was killed in a fire, which was race-related. It was started because they're black, living in this racist white town of Derry, Maine. It was very specific. It was a very important plot point of the book and of the story. And it's just completely removed. It's removed in the movie. It's not mentioned in the movie at all. It's talked about in the movie that his family dies in a fire, but it's never mentioned that the fire was race-related. Again, they took away his role of the historian as a group. They basically reduced him to the token black kid. He's just the token black kid in the movie. And they really just, like, reduced his importance and kind of gave his importance to somebody else. And also his race is important in the book, and it becomes something in the movie that's not even mentioned, even though he's, like, the only black kid around a bunch of white people. White people really seem to be under this impression that if they have one black friend, that one black friend is, like, totally fine with it. And that one black friend, like, totally doesn't think about it and, like, totally doesn't see race. I don't see color, you know? And this is just a prime example of how, like, the I don't see color argument is, like, so reductive, because by removing the mentions of racism and race, they really flatten the character into nothing, you know, and removing the historical context of racism in these little small white towns, which I also mentioned in my Stranger Things review, is just so disingenuous, you know, like these people want these nostalgia projects, but they want to ignore all the bad shit that was also occurring at that time period. So, like, the book itself is set in 1950s Maine, very specifically, and the race shit is a huge part of the book. And they just want to, like, number one, they want to, like, reset it in, like, Reagan era 1980s, when the fucking war on drugs and shit was, like, really getting going, and, like, racism was, like, still popping, you know, and it's still popping now. Like, it's just all very, like, make America great again, which I know I said the same exact thing in my Stranger Things video. I know I keep, like, mentioning Stranger Things, but there's, like, a lot of parallels with, like, people wanting these nostalgia projects, but, like, not wanting to deal with the issues that comes with looking back into the past. You know what I'm saying? Sophia Coppola. So, also, the other thing that I found to be fucking ugly as fuck, I still don't like these motherfucking romances and love triangles involving these girl characters. I hated it in Stranger Things. I hate it here. It was actually worse in the book. The love triangle between the fucking fat kid and Bill the Stutterer and the redheaded little girl is in the book. It is a central issue of the book. Like, underage sex. There's, like, a child orgy scene in the book, which thankfully was removed from the movie, but they still included the concept of this love triangle around the little girl and, like, two of the other little boys, which is annoying as fuck. Like, if we're gonna remove the child orgy scene, which I'm glad they did, don't get me wrong, if we're gonna, why don't we just remove the whole, like, romantic subplot altogether? Like, why can't the little girl just, like, be their little homie? Like, I really feel like these writers, these male writers and directors, do not know how, number one, they don't know how to write platonic friendships between boys and girls. And they just don't. And like when I was 12, 13 years old, I had platonic boyfriends. Like, wasn't nobody, I mean, some people maybe were having sex at that age, but nobody I knew was having sex at that age. And you know, when you're little, you have boyfriends, you know, a lot of that stuff doesn't even come till later, but you have these adults, you know, that are looking at things through this adult lens, and they don't know how to write platonic friendships between boys and girls, and I see it over and over and over, and I just find it to be very irritating. Like, all of your girl characters don't have to serve as romantic interests and subplots for these little fuck-ass boys. Stop it. Stop it. There's no reason for it. It's no reason for it, and it doesn't have to move the plot along in any type of way, because, like, it's supposed to be about the bond between this group. Like, rewrite the shit. It's an adaptation. It's a reboot. Again, you remove the motherfucking child sex scene, thankfully. Like, work the friendship angle without the romantic subplot. And I also feel like that's part of why they took the historian role away from the black kid and gave it to fucking Chubbs, because they also needed to make him more important in the context of the story, because they wanted to, like, push this romantic subplot. Like, Stuttering Bill is the main character, because his little brother Georgie getting taken by it is kind of what, like, sets this chain of events off that gets, like, all the friends involved. So, like, he already kind of, like, has his value, has his importance, right? And then you have the little girl who's the only girl out of the group, so, like, that right there gonna, like, make her stand out. So now they're gonna, like, have them in this, like, love triangle with this fat kid. They have to, like, give the fat kid some type of, like, importance in the group, so they, like, take the historian shit away from the little black boy and give it to him. Stop it, and stop writing girl characters as romantic love interests, especially little girls under the age of motherfucking 13. I did not care for the whole 11 annoying little kid crush shit either. Like, there's a scene in this movie, in It, where, you know, the little girl, this is a spoiler, if you want to turn it off now. There's a scene where the little girl, like, gets kidnapped, she gets, like, taken by the monster, and they have to like go rescue her. So, like, now she's a motherfucking damsel in distress, and when they find her, she's in this, like, catatonic state. And the way that, like, they break her out of the catatonic state is that, like, one of the boys kisses her, like some Sleeping Beauty shit. I was like, no, if you don't slap the shit out of that little girl, bitch, wake up. Like, your first instinct as a writer, the first thing you put your pen, and that whole scene of, like, her being in the catatonic state and shit, like, that was all new. Like, the first thing that, like, comes to your mind with your pen is to, like, have one of these little boys kiss her, which we could even start getting into, like, you kissing a little girl is in a catatonic state. Are we getting into some questions of consent? We don't even have to go there, but, like, that's where your pen goes. So irritating and stereotypical. Like, my first thought really would have been to slap the shit out of her, like, or shake her at, like, Beverly, that's her name. Beverly, wake up, like, wake up. But he, like, kisses her, and she wakes up. I was like, no. Come on. These little girl characters deserve better. I mean, and these little boy characters deserve better too. Like, stop writing little boys as abrasive little fucking shits. Stop writing little girls as fucking love interests. Stop removing the context of fucking race from these nostalgia projects. Like, stop. Like, and the movie's good. You're cheapening the work. Especially considering the work addresses a lot. I mean, like, again, like, the sex aspect of the work is weird, but, like, especially considering the work addresses a lot of these aspects of race and stuff like that. Like, you're cheapening your own adaptation, which is good in so many ways. You know what I'm saying? So that is my review for It. I did enjoy it. Good, the bad, and the ugly. It just came out, so I know probably several of you have not seen it yet, but for those of you that have seen it or aren't planning on seeing it or don't care about spoilers and whoop-de-woo, let me know what you guys think. Leave me comments. There will be links in the description box as always. See you guys next time. Peace. Oh yeah, and clearly I got my braids back in. Bye guys.